How is it going, guys, and welcome back to another high stakes PLO vlog over here from the Aria poker room in Las Vegas. We are buying in for $10,000 and playing quarter PLO, which will turn into a quarter 50 in about 10 minutes, and look down at ace jack 5 with the ace jack of clubs in our first hand in the big blind. Before we get started, I wanted to share a couple of my results playing here in Vegas since about 2 months. You guys have been asking for it. I share also all these results on Instagram if you want to follow me there under JNandez Poker. So we can see here I played about 211 hours across 40 sessions in about 2 months, won $100,000. Now we can see a graph that goes quite gradually up. There was an in-between downswing where I played 51, 2, and sometimes $400 straddles that didn't go my way. But apart from that, things are going very smoothly here in Vegas. And I'm happy to put in some more hours at the Aria poker room, playing quarter and quarter 50 primarily. Let's get back into the action. Suited Superman makes it 100 from the low jack. The small blind calls, and we go ahead and make the call as well, heading 3 ways to a flop. The flop comes down 10-10-9 with 2 spades and 1 club, and I flop an overpair and a backdoor flush draw. And check to the pre-flop raiser. Suited Superman makes a quick check back, and the turn is the 9 of clubs. So now we have the nut flush draw alongside with pocket jacks. And as I'm sensing some weakness, I decided to lead out now, betting $200 into $300. I think this bet is a little bit too light. My opponents are still supposed to hold some 10x combos, some 9x combos, but also some weaker aces and kings that are potentially now turning a hand like clubs as well, or even without clubs potentially are calling me. So I would say the turn bet is a little bit thin. Suited Superman makes the call, small blind gets out of the way, and the river is the king of hearts. Now I'm arriving on the river with the bottom of my range. At the same time, I'm blocking queen jack, a possible hand that can call me on the river. So I decided to bet once again. This time we're going to bet $450. I think this bet is fine by the river, but I would say building the pot in the first place on the turn by betting instead of going for a check call is a little bit too light, and a solver prefers to just check the turn in order to make weaker flush draws catch up, but also avoid the potential raise in the turn, and also avoid narrowing our opponent's range down to the point where almost any river bluff is going to have not as much of a success rate, especially given our reverse blockers. We are actually blocking the hands we want our opponent to fold on a lot of river cards. So a little bit thin of a bet, but it ends up working out as Suited Superman lets it go, and we take down the first pot. In our second hand, we're now playing a 3 blind game, so it's 25, 25, 50, and we do see the player to my right is actually posting a $25 chip, as we are looking down at ace, king, queen, ace, with the king, queen of hearts, a beautiful hand to start things off on the button. The player to my right, who's posting the 25, is considering his options, and will end up making a call. We bump it up now through the obvious decision, making it 200. We could actually make it 250. As the player to my left immediately 3 bets to $700. This is obviously music to my ears as the cutoff makes the fold. We look down at the stack size of the small blind. He has only $2,000 in total roundabout. Look back at the aces. He will be pot committed when we shove. So we do make the shove. He makes a snap call, and we agree to run it 2 times. Look back at the aces. The first board runs out quite low. I already tabled my hand because I was the player who shoved all in. Turn is a brick. River brings in a 3 as my opponent shows down pocket 3s and 10s for a set on the first run out. So he's going to win at least half the pot. We do escape another loss on the second one, and we unfortunately have to split this pot early on in the session. It was a small pot though for the stakes we're playing. I'm hopeful for the rest of it. In our next hand, we are in the straddle, and we see an under the gun open raise to $200. The rest of the table gets out of the way. And we look down at king 9, 7, 6 with the king 9 of clubs and make a standard defend. We're heading to the flop 2 ways, 450 in the middle, and the flop is queen 10, 7 rainbow. And we flop bottom pair and a double gut shot, no backdoor flush draw. Certainly one of the weaker flops for my hand, but just slightly too strong to give up against the bet. So our opponent goes out and bets $325. And with the pair and the double gut shot, we're still supposed to continue here. Our hand is too strong, but obviously the under the gun range will be filled with hands like ace, ace, king, and ace, king, jack with a better pair frequently. Still gonna make the call. The turn is the 5 of hearts, and this breaks off. We check to our opponent because the board didn't change, and our opponent goes into the tank. At this point, if we do see a second barrel, we are obviously folding, but our opponent actually surprises us and checks behind. The river now brings in the queen of hearts. So now we have arrived with just a pair of 7s. But we do have actually a couple of blockers. We have a 6 of hearts and a 7, which is blocking some of the full houses that are possible, like queen 7, for example. But also some of the nut flushes that he might check back on the turn and then call on the river, like ace 6 of hearts, king 6 of hearts. And therefore the solver actually wants to turn this hand into a bluff and pot size bet the river. Our opponent's range is capped at this point as he wasn't betting turn, but I decided to check and give up, which is a mistake. Our opponent's range is going to be too strong and showdown heavy. We do show down our pair of 7s, and surprisingly, it's good. But as mentioned, we should actually turn our hand into a bluff at this point. So in our next hand, we are in the big blind for $25, and everyone folds so far up to the small blind. We look down at ace, ace, 6-3 rainbow, and we see a $200 open from the small blind. We make a 3-bet to $650, and the small blind makes a snap call. Heads up to the flop in an already sizable pot, and the flop is ace, jack, 4. We flop top set on a rainbow board. Things are looking great as the small blind checks. And at this point, we do want to start betting and building a pot. This is Pot Limit Omaha for a reason. We want to make sure that we can get all the chips in the middle, possibly by the river. So we go out and bet $800, and my opponent makes a pretty quick call. The turn is the 3 of diamonds, which opens up a backdoor flush draw, and the small blind checks once again. And at this point, things are pretty interesting. My opponent has about $4,000 left. I look back to see if I have the ace of diamonds, because the raise calling range from the small blind is going to have a lot of suited ace-x hands. And in this case, that would mean my opponent would have turned the nut flush draw. We want to make sure we get called here by the nut flush draw, as well as hands like ace 4, ace 3. And if we were to pot, I am afraid my opponent might actually fold. So we go ahead and bet $1,500. And my opponent doesn't think long. Before jamming all in, we make the quick call, and he's asking me what I have. If I have a set, I do have a set, and he has a massive cooler hand. He has ace, king, queen, jack with the ace, king of diamonds. So top 2 pair, nut flush draw, and we run it twice, and he breaks out on a jack of hearts and a 5 of spades, and we scoop a massive $11,000 pot early on in the session. Now, 2 quick announcements before we continue with this session. The first one is in regards to this week's live streams. I will be live streaming every single day this week over on YouTube and teach you more about how to transition into Pot Limit Omaha or how to move up in stakes in PLO. I will be sharing my own success story from the last 10 to 15 years and show you systematically how I improved my game and built up my career. So make sure to tune in this week's live streams over on YouTube. The second announcement is in regards to Black Friday. So this Wednesday to this Sunday, we have the biggest sale on our site, actually the only sale of the year, at PLOmastermind.com. You can learn more about our exclusive offers surrounding Black Friday. Make sure to not miss out on the best deal that we have to offer for the PLO Mastermind all year around. Let's get back into the action. Our next hand about 30 minutes later is even better, as we looked at ace, ace, king, 6 double suited with spades and clubs. We see a $200 open in the cutoff and a call in the big blind as we chip out 8 black chip and make it $800 to go. Now the cutoff makes a quick call, and this could be a dangerous spot because he has over $20,000 in his stack and is covering my $14,000 chip stack. So we're going to go ahead and see the flop heads up as the big blind gets out of the way. And we're hoping for some spades. We're hoping for some clubs or an ace, some big flop. Flop is jack 5, 3 with 1 spade. So we didn't really flop one of our big hands we were looking for, but the flop is also quite difficult to handle for the cutoff, as he shouldn't have too many sets or 2-pair combos. We do have a blocker with a 6, and we have a strong overpair / the best overpair. So we chip out at $1,200 bet. which is congruent with the solver. The solver also prefers to use this hand sometimes as a pot-sized bet fold in order to apply max pressure to one pair holdings. My opponent calls, and the turn is the 10 of hearts. This is a bad turn card for us. Our opponent is not only pairing up now with Jack 10, holding 2 pair, but also is going to turn a lot of combo draws when the heart rolls off. We have obviously black cards, so we're not going to have one of the heart draws or blockers, so our hand is actually supposed to be a check and then continue against a small bet, but fold against a large bet. This turn card just interacts really well with the cutoff calling range on the flop, and because we don't have any heart blockers, our hand is not supposed to continue here putting chips in the middle. However, I decided to bet and apply continuous pressure. Again, this is not congruent with the solver, and in hindsight, I wish I would have checked. I put that at $1,800 bet, and my opponent doesn't think for too long before announcing all in / pot size raise, and we cannot make this call here. We have too much behind in order to stack off at this point with one pair and a gut shot. We have to let our hand go and lose quite a bit of money in the process. We end up switching tables because the air conditioner was blowing over this table pretty hard. So we switched to a warmer table, and this will be the final hand that I recorded of this session tonight at quarter 50. There's an early position raise to 200, a hijack call. The big blind is about to call as well. As we look down at ace, king, deuce, double suited, a great hand to end things up. We're going to make it $1,000 straight, put in the yellow chip. And the early position player, a very experienced player with a $16,000 stack, is asking for a chip count. As we announced, we have $8,000 in total. He is clearly covering us and is going to make this call. And the big blind goes ahead and comes along as well. The flop comes down 10-7-4 rainbow. And this is unfortunately not the flop we were looking for. We don't have a straight draw. We don't have a pair blocker. And we also don't have 2 backdoor flush draws. Even though the stack to pot ratio is small, our hand is not strong enough to get the money in. The big blind goes out and checks, and we only have one decision to make here, which is to check as well. The solver would actually pot our holding if we had 2 backdoor flush draws, but just check and surrender with 1 backdoor flush draw. The player with position checks behind, and the turn is the 2 of hearts. The big blind announces immediately to pot. And even though we only have 1 pair and the nut flush draw, we can't get away from this hand. The big blind has $4,700. We have $7,000 behind, and there's already $3,000 in the middle. And our opponent might also have a draw that we can dominate. So he could have a hand like a 10 in a flush draw, pocket jacks in a flush draw, pocket queens in a flush draw, a straight draw in a flush draw. And in case we do run into a set or 2 pair, we still have outs to hit and make our hand. And therefore, we have only one decision given how big the pot is at this point, which is to go all in and hope for the best. So we put our chips in the middle. The early position player makes the fold, and the big blind makes the call. He asked me what I have. I show my hand. I have 2 kings and the nut flush draw. And my opponent announced he has a 10 and a gut shot only. So we are drawing very good at this point. You run it twice. The first river is the 7 of spades. And the second river is the ace of spades, and we scoop a very nice $12,625 pot to end this session. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode on high stakes live PLO cash games at the Aria. If so, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment about what kind of content you would like to see here in the future. If you enjoy live PLO cash games, let me know below, and we see each other in the next one. This has been JNandez. Good luck at the tables.